No problem. We are we are incredibly excited to celebrate the International Women's Day in our cafe today. And today's session is very special for us, especially we have so many philosophers, thinkers, scientists, feminists are here, and we have very special viewers too in our cafe today. So I warmly welcome you all. I filled with joy and gratitude to have you all at the same platform. Uh, Topic of the panel discussion is Philosophy Unbound, Women Philosophers in Ancient and Modern India. So before starting the discussion, can we have you all on one stage, respected professors, because we are already in virtual world, so we are at the same platform, same stage. So I would like to introduce all the speakers before starting the panel discussion, not as a male or female philosopher, but as an awareness, as once said by Acharya Rajneesh, that is Osho, that an awareness is neither she or he. So with this note, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Rakesh Chandra sir. He is the former Dean of Academics and former Director of Women Studies in Lucknow University. He has contributed significantly in advancing gender equality and women's rights. Sir, I welcome you.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is equally genius, Professor Meera Chakravarti ma'am. She is former member of Karnataka Women's Commission and Professor of Philosophy in Bangalore University. She is associated currently with Jain University, Delhi, and she is not only a philosopher but a poet too. I warmly welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our third speaker is exceptionally well, and she is an ideal woman for me personally, but currently she has not joined yet. Professor Shivani Sharma, ma'am. She is former head of Department of Philosophy and coordinator of Interdisciplinary Center for Swami Vivekananda Studies, Punjab University.
कंफर्म कर दीजिए, वैसे मैंने किसी से कहा था कंफर्म तो लिखी है लेकिन ये 7 ही है कि नहीं?
म्यूट कर दीजिए।
Kindly mute your mic.
नहीं, आप म्यूट कर सकते हो, वहाँ पे होस्ट म्यूट कर।
हाँ, आलो करने ठीक है, ओके।
Make me co-host also so I can play about those roles.
Yeah. Okay. So our speaker is our Honorable President Professor Balram Singh sir, and he is the professor, scientist, and more than that. I'm sorry to inform you that our fourth speaker, our powerful woman philosopher, we can say, Professor Asha Mukherjee ma'am, is unable to join us today due to some medical emergency in her family, and we wish to listen her in future. Okay, so may I request you all to frame in your ideas in 12 to 14 minutes so that we would have questionnaire round, and I would now request Professor Chandra to start and ignite the discussion. So I think what we really like to hear from you all, it's like there are three important points. I really want to listen to you. First is, who are the important women philosophers in India in modern and ancient time? Second point is, are all Indian philosophers are feminist or not? If they are not categorized as feminist, are they belong to rebel women? And third point is, what role does a man plays in making of women philosophers? So may I request Professor Chandra to frame his views on these points?
Good morning to Professor Balram Singh and good evening to all of us in India. We are celebrating the Women's Day, as you said, which was International Women's Day, is actually celebrated on the 8th of March. What I have been asked to do, let me quickly try and say a few things about it. One and foremost, there are many ways of characterizing philosophy. In one view, especially with reference to classical Indian philosophy, there is a position according to which there are three things which can be said about philosophy. One, that philosophy is taken as anviksha, or the science of review, where any basic concepts of a particular discipline are studied in it. The second is to understand philosophy as a branch of knowledge where we talk about metaphysics, epistemology, logic, ethics, and aesthetics. And the third view is about looking at philosophy as a worldview, where we look at the different kind of thinkers, including the saint poets and other sages and munis, who talk about what should be the aim of life, etc. So all these three views are the views about in terms of which we talk about somebody as a philosopher. So there's a technical view of narrowing it down to people like Dignac, Dharmakirti, Vatsyayan, etc. And then there is another view which takes about people like Kabir, Tulsi, etc., also as philosophers. On the question of the second question, which I also wanted to bring forth before we talk, is on the question of gender, race, color, caste, and religion. There are many questions, and many questions which are empirical, structural, and some are of more theoretical nature. Philosophy as an abstract discipline, principally based on reason, has sometimes been charged that it excludes women, because it talks about only a priori knowledge, it talks about rationality, and women are supposed to be emotional, and therefore they are excluded in one way. Many others have also pointed out that in the history, especially of Western philosophy, also in Indian classical writing, there are philosophers from Plato to Ludwig Wittgenstein who have made very sexist and derogatory remarks about women. Some have said that women are not capable of becoming active citizens. Some of them have said they are not capable of reason. Some of them have said that they cannot participate in polis. And some of them, like Plato and Aristotle, had said that since they are not free citizens, therefore they are under the control of their husbands or father, they cannot be taken as citizens. Now, what I want to do is that last time when I had met Professor Balram Singh, he had said that, you know, instead of just talking about the ancient world and the medieval world, why is it that in the philosophy circles, this he had said that in Varanasi, why don't we really talk about the current scenario of philosophers and talk about what they have to say? And taking a suggestion from that, I am going to talk in the next 10 minutes. One is that I also, before that, let me also say that about the ancient world, when we talk about, everybody said that, no, we talk about Maitreyi and Gargi and Lopamudra and Ghosha and Apala. But the fact is that, you know, we have very little writing and very little evidence of what they were saying. So in the Maitreyi Yagyavalkya Samvad, what was the kind of thing that she was saying and what were the arguments that he was giving? Were they very different from the arguments of Yagyavalkya? Does not come across very well. And even when you look at the writings or the account that we have of the woman called Apala, it's actually that since she was rejected for not having a good skin, she prayed and then she became this great saint, etc., etc. But no great accounts of women philosophers and their philosophies have actually been recorded and part of the pantheon in the classical world. So what will I do? What I will do is that taking the instructions from Professor Balram Singh, let me begin with my own understanding and the list of women philosophers. And in my times when I was actually studying, the Indian community of philosophy teachers had very impressive and a very large number of women. My own teacher, Professor Rupreka Varman, and I'll just very quickly mention something, 20 main people. My own teacher, Professor Rupreka Varma, who was born in 1943, was an extremely influential name who published in an international, very famous journal called Mind on vagueness and the principle of excluded middle. And she had a few other publications on the nature of logical laws and later on feminist themes. She was an extraordinarily sharp analytical mind and became more active in social political activism with passion. She had worked for her thesis on Kant's theory of synthetic a priori judgments. Another very influential name in that time was Professor Margaret Chatterjee, who was in Delhi and also in Vishwabharati University and was the vice president of the International Society for Metaphysics. An exhibitioner at Oxford. She was an extraordinary scholar on Gandhian thought and edited contemporary Indian philosophy. She, in fact, passed away 2 years back and one of the best people who wrote on Gandhi and thought. Then, of course, there was a very, very important Marx scholar and a Daya Krishna enthusiast, Professor Bhuvan Chandel, who was from Chandigarh. And she was an eminent influencer in the Indian Council of Philosophical Research and also in Indian Philosophical Congress. Another very interesting contribution made in North India was by Professor Chaya Rai, who set up a pioneering center for yoga in the University of Jabalpur. And there was a whole host, of course, of scholars from Calcutta. Professor Chanda Gupta, who was a direct student of one of the most influential philosophers of our time, Hilary Putnam. She was working in India and abroad on realism, and she was very well received as a scholar of philosophy, both in India and abroad. Professor Krishna Roy, who worked in the area of existentialism and phenomenology. She also worked on J.N. Mohanty. And one more, again, my teacher, Professor Shefali Moitra, who is a notable philosopher. And I think one of the best books on feminist thought has been published by her some 15 years back. It's called Objectivity, Communication, and Feminist Thought, published by Motilal Banarsidas. And I think she is truly representative of a great scholar of philosophy as well as on feminist theory. The other very important person, I think, again, globally recognized, is Professor Amita Chatterjee. And she's a scholar of international stature. She became the first vice chancellor of the Presidency University. And she writes on consciousness studies and Nyaya theory with equal ease. She is very, very important, and everybody needs to learn from her how she learned Indian philosophy after she had joined the faculty. Again, another teacher of mine, Professor Vibha Chaturvedi, she worked on the idea of personal identity, and she wrote on Wittgenstein, religious language, with an understanding and perspicuity, which I think is rare. So she's not a very aggressive person, but she writes very, very well on Wittgenstein. And she also wrote papers on empirical studies on women and attitude towards girls' education in 3 states, especially the state of Uttarajal. There's another philosopher, very, very important, who teaches both in India and in the United States, called Professor Shashi Matilal. And she is, again, a very interesting kind of a scholar in ethics. And she teaches in India. She was teaching in India in Delhi University. And she was also she's also a very important scholar, and I would like to call your attention to her work. Sorry. So Vibha Chaturvedi is again very, Shashi Matilal is also another very important person who again passed away a few years back, was Professor Deepa Nag Haksar, who was one of the rare people who worked on aesthetic theory in Buddhism. She wrote an outstanding scholarly articles on Brahma Dharma, and she established a pioneering institution called DIVA, Development of Integrated Value Application, with support of Ford Foundation. Another very important philosopher who again settled abroad, especially was working, I think, in Germany for a very long time and married a German person, Professor Anindita Niyogi Balslave. She's again an Indologist. I'm sure Professor Balram Singh knows her. She is very well known for her interviews with Richard Rorty on cultural otherness. Then there's Professor Roshan Ara from Aligarh, who wrote a rare issue of early Wittgenstein and religious beliefs, and she won a scholar branched in the continental and analytical tradition. Then Professor Sandhya Basu from Ravindra Bharati, well-known philosopher of language who wrote on Kant and justification. She's also one of the finest teachers of philosophy in the country. Then Tara Chatterjee, associated with Ramakrishna Mission, she wrote on knowledge and freedom in Indian philosophy. She also wrote on K.C. Bhattacharya's reading of Kant, and she has this work was jointly edited with Professor J.L. Mohanty. Then there's Shanti Joshi from Allahabad, who produced one of the most beautiful books which I have seen in Hindi on existentialism. Professor Geeta Ramanna, whom again we lost last year due to cancer, was a great scholar of philosophy of mind in Mumbai. She was interested in classical Western and Indian traditions, and she published in OUP. Professor Archana Malik Gaure, a specialist on Indian philosophy and ethics. Professor Shubhada Joshi, again, a very important signature. She's the president of the Bombay Philosophy Society and director of Buddhist Studies. She had specialization in Arthashastra, ethics, meta-ethics, saint philosophers, religious philosophers in 19th century Maharashtra. Of course, we all know about Kapila Vatsyayan, Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan. She's one of the best scholars on Indian aesthetics and a performing artist and a scholar. She has been recognized globally. I would be failing in my duty if I did not mention Professor Asha Mukherjee, who is unfortunately not there with us. She worked on deontic logic, which is the logic of ought statements, a very rare area. And she also worked in philosophy of religion and epistemology. And she is a very well-known scholar of philosophy of religion in India and abroad. She got her PhD from Indiana University, and she's a Fulbright scholar. And she has great networks in India and abroad. Professor Namita Nimbalkar from Mumbai, she has worked on Gandhi, religion, and communal harmony. She's the director of the Gandhian Studies Institute and presently the member of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. Professor Madhuchanda Sen, again, a great philosopher in philosophy of mind, presently at Jadavpur University. Professor Moniji Pasanyal, daughter of the great Shivjivan Bhattacharya, iconic figure. And she worked on Kalidas Bhattacharya, and the son of Krishna Chandra Bhattacharya. And she's also a great scholar of logic. Then there is another very, very important scholar in India presently, Professor Srikala Nair from Kaladi, who's consistently working on what we call social epistemology, with reference to the works of Goldman. And she had been networking with scholars of all generations, especially the young people, to keep philosophical dialogue going. Among the young people, I think I also must mention Jayati Sahu, a great friend and fan of Professor Balram Singh, who writes on feminist themes and on themes both of Indian and Western persuasion. Professor Rekha Basu, Professor Rekha Navneet, and Professor Maushami Guha. And Maushami Ghosh, I think, is one very good person who's working on philosophical counseling and music. Another very important philosopher, very well received, is Professor Bindu Puri, who has a great contribution to scholarship in social political philosophy. She has written very, very good work, which are published by all the best publications in the world on Kant, Ambedkar, Gandhi, Tagore, and now Aurobindo. Now, all these are very important people, and there are many, many more about whom I can talk in the contemporary philosophy scene. But as was also mentioned by Shipra, are all women philosophers doing similar things? The answer is no. They're doing very different kinds of things. There are people who are doing philosophy of language. There are people who are doing social and political philosophy. There are people who are doing Indian philosophy. There are people who are doing philosophy of religion. And some of them are also feminists. Now, are all women philosophers in India and abroad feminists? Again, the answer is no. There are people across the continents who are not feminists and yet women. There are also men who are actually feminists. So this is a very interesting kind of thing. Now, there is another question which I think is very important. Do all women philosophers in India perform the gendered act? Because they say gender is a performance. And I think that, as I mentioned, Apala, if she's considered to be a philosopher, she was praying to get a beautiful skin so that she may be accepted by the husband. Now, that is actually performing the gender. But I do not have personal acquaintance with all the present philosophers who are women, but I don't think that all of them are deliberately performing gender, and they do not want to take a submissive, emotional, private space. And even when some of these women philosophers are advocating about the personal and the particularist, they are doing it with good philosophical argument and not about their way. I think that that's the kind of a position that I am taking on this. I think my 12 minutes are over now. Is that so, Shipra?
Time bound, sir. Thank you.
So I was very quickly doing my work because I thought that Shipra will put an end to my talk. So
thank you, sir. Yeah. So may I now request Professor Meera Chakravarti ma'am to frame her ideas. Ma'am, you are muted. Ma'am, you are muted. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Balram Singh and team, and especially Shipra and all others for organizing this. I would, I think I'll miss Asha, but I would rather disagree with the scheme that or the suggestion that we need not go to the ancient philosophers and can only concentrate on what is happening, because if you do not know what you inherit, if you do not know what is your legacy, then it is difficult to find how much or where are we now. If you read Russell and others. Hello? Hello?
Yeah,
Can
go
you
ahead,
hear?
please.
Okay.
Yes.
So the term darshan that is used in is accepted as the equivalent term is philosophy in English, which falls short of conveying the exact meaning. Darshan is from the darshana in South Indian pronunciation. It is called darshana because na is to be pronounced. So it comes from the root drish, to see. So therefore, there is perspectives. What you see is that you have perspectives, and these perspectives that we have, we try to find out in these stories of, or you can call them anecdotes, etc. Because the anecdotes ultimately represent the culture of the communities of the then society. So we try to find out as to what are these values or philosophical values that the women stood for. How courageous were they to justify for what they stood. Now, the idea of justice lies in the heart of moral and political philosophy. Freedom is a philosophical concept which is in the inalienable human rights to realize one's will, and this has a long history, and therefore we have to fall back on the long history. You see Sartre, or you see the Indian when you say freedom in Sartrean terms, you will see that he championed the idea of freedom in his work, as he said that humans are condemned to be free. Now the same thing has been also said in the Indian context, where this mukti or moksha, freedom from all kinds of bondage, are the concept that is supported. So there is a resonance. I mean, both in being and nothingness of Sartre, and also in the Upanishad, that we find a resonance about it. Now, therefore, if you follow this idea, you will see how in human history the actions related to freedom, for which a journey capable of explaining a woman's past, present, and future, her discontent and ingenuity, pain, pleasure, need to be followed. Freedom is used both as a domain of existence in the present and the regeneration in the future. Her journey has passed through historical stages through which her struggle continues, though fractured several times. And we see how thoughts regarding emancipation or freedom, whether it is subtle or overt, are therefore very significant. And in this sense, I will quote some anecdotes and the discussions which I feel there is a lot of discussions that were needed on Dr. Rakesh Chandra's standpoint, which I would like to discuss later on. But let me now point out my legacy as to. Now, you will find that whether it is pre-industrial society or modern society with technological advancement, since you mentioned ancient India as well as modern times, I'm trying to mention this, that a woman's identity has remained a dominant concern, as there have been continuous attempts, mostly violent, to replace our own identity with the identity framed by the patriarchy. I have included women who are both educated as well as those who are non-textual, non-textual background, and who are not educated at all, because philosophy need not necessarily come from the university academics. Therefore, it is interesting to see who could consciously, the women who could consciously mark out terms to break with conservative thinking and tradition. A philosopher will be the person who will really originally has to contribute something. And therefore, we find how these women take a bold step. We have a story of Jabala, whose son, wishing to go to the teacher for learning, asks her about his father's identity. Now, patriarchy will always ask the father's identity. And his mother says, I do not know what family you are, my child. I got you when I went about a great deal as a maid servant in my youth. However, I am Jabala by name, and you are Satyakama. And the teacher says, when he goes and reports to the teacher says, you are Satyakama, you have told the truth, and therefore I admit you in my academy or in my school. Now, this may appear simplistic to say that these are stories, because the stories reflect the behavior and practice of the members of the community. Now, in this context, what is important to note is that Jabala stands by the truth and freedom of expression, despite the fact that she could have faced isolation. These narratives of the past define the historical experiences of women, and they could presumably be specific experiences of women and their long traumatic moments of radical break, experimenting with their search for freedom in their life's journey. Hence, this can be the context in which we may explore a different philosophy while renewing our acquaintance with these women, since their subjectivity here needs to be revisited and may be reflected on as regeneration. Now, we have other stories. I'm trying to skip them right now. We have, in this context, Rakesh Chandraji mentioned about Maitreya Samvada. Now, Maitreya Yajnavalkya Samvada Chandogya Upanishad is quite in detail, and so therefore there is that kind of data which you would need to form a perspective as to what actually they stood for. Amartya Sen has referred about Maitreya Yajnavalkya Samvada in his book, Idea of Justice, where Maitreya is standing asking Yajnavalkya that she will accompany him for the metaphysical query or inquisition, whatever it is. And why? Because the material world does not give her the idea of the freedom that she has. Now, we are all facing over materialism today. We see what materialism is doing now. And therefore, I think this standpoint, because in every society you will have this kind of what you call dvanda, or this kind of dilemma. And then Maitreya is taking a stand against that kind of materialism, which is not giving her the liberty or the freedom. Now, Gargi explains the same in Janaka Sabha, and she's asked by the male debater that if she asks too many questions, her head will fall. Can you imagine how this kind of an exchange of conversation or exchange of words would try to create an impact? But she doesn't, of course, she tries to subvert this whole kind of a debate, and then she acts for freedom, which is another issue, and we have a lot of material on that. Now, what we are trying to see is contrast this with today's Gender Equality and Human Development Measurement revisited report, which mentions the capability and enthusiasm of women to enter the traditional male fortresses. Now, the philosophy there is, and Martha Nussbaum is the philosopher who has tried to say that the capability has to be defined in a different way. She emphasizes the capability potential theory when she says women in much of the world lack support from fundamental functions of human life, which is very important observation. And unequal social and political circumstances give women unequal human capabilities. Now, what kind of perspectives you expect which is given in such circumstances that women could have. So the central question asked by the capabilities approach is not how satisfied is the woman, but who has planted for her whole life. I mean, the government of India has honored her with Padma Bhushan. Whole life planted trees. Now, what philosophy she stands for? This philosophy that she stands for certainly is the most important thing today that we are concerned, that she stands for the environmental concerns. And then she has planted 8,000 trees, and then and she has treated the trees as her own son. So what I want to say is that whether it is the ordinary woman or it is university educated women do have the capabilities to have a philosophical vision, and they act upon it, and that is more important. So I would beg to differ from Professor Rakesh Chandra that philosophy teachers and philosophers, they will be, I think, two different categories. Philosophers are contributing original contribution, and philosophy teachers, we have great philosophy teachers. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I think, is my time over, Shipra?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I stop.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. And Professor Shivani Sharma has already joined. Ma'am, I warmly welcome you, Shivani ma'am. She is traveling actually, but
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Shikha. I'll be listening mostly. Most of the time I'll be listening because I'm in a bus and it is a very, I would say it's a vulnerable situation. Anytime the driver can honk the horn. So I'll reserve my comments and some of my views to the last of it. Please, you carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So may I request Balram sir to frame his views? So you are muted.
Muted. Yeah, no, thank you very much. My turn came very quickly, so nice of you. So I was thinking maybe I'll be like I'm the last person. So I want to obviously, as you obviously can see from my voice, my face may be not as visible to be a man because I don't have mustache, but I do have the simple characteristics of a man. But I wanted to, which something I introduced in my presentation in Banaras. Just maybe not everybody was there, so I just wanted to. Oops, sorry, that's not where I wanted. Yes. So I tried to find myself online, and then I found that my picture matches with women, and that too of European. None of them are Indian. So I'm not sure how much I can talk about Indian women philosophers, but interestingly, even in practice life, people tend to call me ma'am. I have a ma'am caller list. So there may be some characteristics of women. So maybe I have a little bit of authority to talk on behalf of women. This happened in America, in Delhi, and in even JNU. The guard there called me ma'am. So I started looking into some justification, how to justify my existence as a man, and then being referred or being seen on Google, using my epistemology and experimental things to call this. So I went to Bhagavad Gita, and there I found really some solace, where Bhagavan Krishna says that he is in women, feminine qualities. He is fame, prosperity, Kirti, Srivak, Smriti, Medha, Dhriti, Chama. It's a really wonderful quality that women possess. And Bhagavan Krishna said he himself has all those. So I guess that's a good thing to look at. we are looking at qualities, I think. I mean, I think the anatomy and genderism, all those are certainly, you cannot ignore them. As both Meeraji and Professor Chandra talked about, you have to, when you get different perspectives, you want to, but ultimately, it is really what you do and what really works out. I think talking about them, even though disagreement that Professor Meera has is a good idea, because from that difference, I start thinking about that. So she talked about Jabala and patriarchy, Satyakam, but the important thing was that she stood by the truth. That's the characteristic. She stood by the truth, and that really makes it whatever she is. I thought Shipra had mentioned to me that maybe I can talk a little bit about ancient women. I mean, modern women are, of course, there. I wrote an article a long time ago about not the scholars, but more practitioners. Meeraji talked about darshan, comes from drish, which means, of course, her point of view is, how people look at those things. But it also, one has to, perspective that comes as a perspective. But the another perspective is not only a question of scholarly presentation, but really doing it. So darshan also means I have seen it, means I have done it. I have done that, I have seen that kind of things. Also, darshan means something that you have done, and then you're dealing with it. In that characteristic, in that, from that point of view, if we are really looking at the modern women, is like Ritambaraji. When she comes, I have listened to her. Many people go. She obviously has her own perspective, more spiritual. Then there is a Brahma Kumari Shivani. I'm very fond of her. Whenever I hear, I really enjoy. And then I met with Ammaji, that Amrit Anandamai. I met her here in Connecticut. She came once. And, he was following, not only in India, but in the whole, all over the world. Yeah, he was following. So there was Anand, I used to listen to her very regularly. I'm not anymore. I don't watch TV as much, but there was a time when this Anand Murthy Guruma from Haryana, so these are you don't see this kind of things, in the rest of the world. Interestingly, is only you see this in India. So India, from the ancient time, I will come to a few remarks, but even modern times, there are really people who are following them. And they are coming from what Meeraji said, is you tell the truth. And then whatever that is, there is philosophy around it, there are cultures about it, there are knowledge about it, there is practicality about it, there is social conditions about it, all that kind of stuff. But I think truth is truth. And I think we have really a very strong women even today who are leaders. And the only other place I found this when I was visiting Taiwan, there is a Dharma master, Chen. Her father, they are Buddhist, and her father was a Buddhist leader. And then when he passed away, some Christians came to convert her. And that's where she studied. And now she has a huge organization there. So much so that even other organizations from China, from Taiwan, are not allowed in China, but her organization is allowed because of the truth. I think that the important thing is that you follow the nature, and the nature of, I think, all the people is truth. And women have, like I just said, this. Bhagwan Krishna has said so many places that he's in Dhanurdhar mein wo Arjun hai, wo अश्वों में वो कौन सा कोई अश्व का नाम ऐरावत हाथी में है, पेड़ों में पीपल हैं, इस तरह की चीजें. लेकिन महिलाओं स्त्रियों के लिए, उन नारियों के लिए उन्होंने इतने गुण सुनाए, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 गुणों का उन्होंने वर्णन किया. तो इसका मतलब कि पुरुष के अंदर भी वो बातें, ये सारी चीजें होनी चाहिए. मे बी देयर आर नेचुरली मोर of proclivity in women, so we must know that. I mean, I think sometimes we get caught up into this, like men don't recognize this, women, they have to do this. I have to be what I am. Actually, if I'm allowed to be, I think that's good. And I think women do much better when they are allowed to do what they are. And also they have to take the responsibility. that they are what they are, and they have to play their qualities, their nature, their efforts, and their recognition of themselves as whatever they are. I mean, they can be mother, I cannot be, and so I have this inferiority in front of them, because even my daughter stands up to me, and I can't really argue with her so much, because she just has the features that women bring. Now, that said, I wanted to say a few words about ancient times, because this culture does not go just start today. It has something from very, very much past. And so the characters that I see is several. Of course, Sita and Draupadi, all those come into names that most of the time we know. But there were like a whole ecosystem. Anusuya, Mata Anusuya is she is giving philosophical teachings. She's educating Sita. She's educating Sita. So this must be such a great understanding that she has. I know that if we say that Sita asked her in this character, what is your source of all this information? She said, only pati bhakti, मतलब पतिव्रत उन्होंने कहा. तो अभी ऐसे बोलेंगे अरे क्या तो हस्बैंड के पीछे पीछे घूमेंगे तब हमको ज्ञान होगा क्या? नहीं, आई थिंक पतिव्रत का मतलब थोड़ा सा दूसरा होता है कि we have to think about what pati means. People think pati means husband. Pati means honor in reality. So you have to respect honorable thing. A husband should be honorable, and in that honorable thing he will have to honor all the truths, that is all the greatness that a wife in this case, or a daughter or a sister or a mother brings. We all have, most of us have had all of these, and fortunately I have had all of these, and I have learned so much from them. So we need to put that perspective in there. Like when many things are talked in India, for example, Sita was a feminist. I've written an article about that. She was a feminist, which means rebellious. That people normally think the feminists mean that they are rebellious. They just don't want to follow the norm that has been dictated by maybe patriarchy. And in some sense, that is true. You have to, but then you have to also to face. The next phase would be you have to face to have your own recognition, not only what we are against, but what we are. And in that case, I think Sita was one of those. I heard that there was a time when the father, you are under the father, you are under the husband, you are under the son, only some male figures. Well, Sita rebelled against her father, and then she did not accept whatever he had said, that nobody will touch that Shiv Dhanush, but she did. But then she was the one who was told to stay back and take care of the parents' in-laws, when she argued with Ram, actually. And this was a debate. It's like a philosophical debate like this in Ramcharitmanas. Sita spoke a lot more than Ram spoke, actually, and he lost the debate from her, because she convinced Kaushalya that it is her duty to do what. It wasn't the question of whether she has to go there. Actually, everybody was telling she shouldn't go there. Most people would not take the trouble, but she did. So she was rebellious there, and she was rebellious when Lakshman, as a brother-in-law, you can say she didn't have brother, but she had a brother-in-law who asked her to not cross that line. She did. She crossed that line and gave the bhiksha to Ravan. And then at the end, she didn't have a son at that time, but when she was in Lanka, Hanumanji was like her son. And he said that, you are having so much trouble, I'll take you from here. And nobody can stop me. You will be out of this, all the misery. But she said, no, I would not go. I want this Ravan to be punished. I want Ram to come and punish him because he did wrong. He represents the wrong thing. So she was rebellious against all the male figures that you can talk about. But what she was doing, when she lifted the Dhanush, she cleaned it. When she went with Ram, she went to accompany him into trouble. When she gave the bhiksha to Ravan, she was following her kul dharma, kul badhu dharma. Because if in Raghukul, if anybody came ever to ask anything, they always got it. So she wanted to follow that. And when she refused to leave Lanka with Hanuman, she wanted to make sure that there is somebody who is a culprit for the society and should be punished. So I think these terms, if we think about and use them, then we will find there is a sustainable women empowerment through their, you have to be empowered with your own power. If you don't have power, I can't empower you. I mean, I can say it will just make everybody very, very simple. But last point I wanted to make, I think I'm already about 10 minutes, was that time there was a Sursa, there was a Lankini, there was a Supnakha. I mean, Supnakha had also her own issues, when she fought with her brother and she asked for her own area to control, and she was a controller. And then Karan was her, she was a commander. She wasn't a simple person like, just roaming around, and just she fell in love with Ram. I'm not even very sure she fell in love with Ram. But maybe she just she was trying to use honey trap that normally people use today. And she wanted to make sure who these people are who are coming here and staying here. So, and the rest of the thing we know about her. So there are many issues that have happened. I think it's important that a historical person like Mirabai was very strong and she did whatever she wanted to do. And there was another character in Ram's time, Raman time, was Swayam Prabha. Her name was Swayam Prabha, and she was staying by herself. She wasn't there with family or anything, and she was just staying by herself, and she was very powerful. So the spirituality, in my opinion, when you get to yourself, see, spirituality to me is like a self. When you get to yourself, you are as powerful. And as women characters, or philosophers, practitioners, darshanics, they have a lot more. If I go by the Bhagavad Gita, they have a lot more qualities that will make them the guides. And what normally I consider a true, जिसको आज पत्नी भी बोलते हैं, true origin of that word is pathini, dharm pathini. She is the one who can really show the way, whether as a wife also, but most importantly as a mother, she can really save the world. And so I think that everybody is a philosopher from that point of view, from that perspective that Meeraji said, as long as they have a good recognition of their own values, and I think nobody can stop them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. So all of you have ignited our mind, and I have 2-3 points which we need to discuss. First, Chandra sir was talking about the performative gender, that gender is a performative act which is advocated.
Just before you summarize, can I just say a few things so that I can submit a few points?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay. And pardon my situation with all my humility, I request. There are 2-3 points that I would like to submit here. In the context of women as being a biology, if we are treating women as biology, this is one of the questions. And yes, certainly she has to be treated as so. Why? Because she is an agent, as I can take the lead from Professor Balaramji and also Professor Meeraji. They have been, somewhere down the line, I listen to them, and I completely agree that she is an agent, equal agent, as we see in Mahabharata when Draupadi is being pulled by her hair, and she wants the suit. She wants Karan, that karma is going to give its result. You do your duty. You have been asked to pull me to the sabha by pulling me through my hair, and she submits. He rather encourages him to perform his duty, what he has been asked to do. So in that sense, I completely agree that yes, he is an equal agent. And also we do find the reference of Maitreyi when she's being asked, when Yagyavalkya is about to leave for higher quest, and he asks two of his wives, out of which, Maitreyi accepts to be with him on the journey to, uh, the quest of higher knowledge. So she rather accepts this proposal to be with him, not with the purpose to be with him physically, but to search for some kind of higher knowledge. And also we do find references to those, for instance, whereby we find, Sadyobadha. There are two kinds of women. That is, one of them is one who prefers getting married at an early age. And whereas we have another lot of women who prefer, who can, stay single and continue with their journey of ideas and knowledge. And also, I wish to bring to this the notice of this audience gathering here, that we have reference of a feminine principle in the Rigveda Sutta of, that is Vak Sutta, which has been further, I won't say that it has been glamorized, but yes, symbolically it has a great, potential to be understood, which has been explained by Bhartrihari in the context of the Vaikhari, Madhyama, Pashyanti, and also, the Shaktas make fun of them that they couldn't see, this Pashyanti state of Vak. They could see only Vaikhari, Madhyama, and I'm skipping the one state. Yeah. Sorry. And another point which I want to bring to your notice here is that the concept of rivers has played a great significance in the Saptasindhu culture. And Kalpana of Saraswati, Shatudri, and, the other six, because Sindhu is a male principle. So, but around that male principle, we have other six, rivers, Asikni, Purushni, Shatudri, Vipasa, and, these principles of, this principle of Saraswati is actually nothing but an indication of highest form of consciousness that can be, I'm so sorry, that can be thought of in the domain of, debate of matter and consciousness. And also this, the principle of river is also symbolic of Gau. It is also rendered as Gau. Gau means guy, cow, which is again a symbol of purity, pure consciousness, and or purified, enlightening consciousness. That is one of the extended meanings that Sri Aurobindo would, allow himself to accept it. So I feel that when it comes to feminism or celebrating womanhood, I feel that there are at least two levels whereby we can celebrate it. One is that of your physical or biological existence, or, undeniable, which is completely undeniable. You have to accept it. And no denying the fact that that makes us, or that makes women, and a complete agent, a free agent, as, I do understand and recognize the limitations of the educated and the uneducated as well. But I feel that when it comes to be an agent, it is absolutely applicable to the feminine existence as well. And the second aspect is highly symbolic in nature. It is highly, aspiring. It is very, very motivating, inspiring at the same time. And I do not see any reason not to understand this feminine existence through the language, through the Vaka Sutta, which actually, narrates herself. Otherwise, if you see that the concept of Brahman, that is the ultimate reality, is actually been referred as the Sarvanam. It is referred as a pronoun, it, that, but it does not refer to pulling or striling. So it is an indication again to understand that the ultimate principle is actually, I can't say that it's neutral, but yes, it is actually not gendered. So gender or gendered reality has a purpose to fulfill a goal in while it is in a form of existence. So the symbolism, I feel, cannot be undermined or underplayed. So with these words, I think I've said and made my point. I hope that I learn a lot from you by having your remarks on this. Thank you so much,
Thank
Chitra,
you.
for giving me this
Thank you
wonderful
so much, ma'am.
opportunity.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to invite RP sir.
Yes,
Sir, yeah.
thank you, Dr. Shipra, and thank you, panelists. In fact, it's a wonderful discussion which has just undergone, and it's good that there is no ending point in it. It will carry go on. In fact, we should have more episodes like this. 2 points I would like to place before you. One thing that whenever I think of the role of a woman in society, in family, in human life, in anybody's life, one thing which I find and which was my first impression about a woman was around 40 years back, 45 years back. I was reading Karl Marx's book EPM, Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844, which was literally preserved by Rosa Luxemburg. Lenin had no idea about this book. It was not published at all. And Rosa Luxemburg, in fact, she kept it with herself. And then she gave it to Gore Lukács, Hungarian philosopher. And they got it published in the 1930s. That was the first time that Marx's most authentic philosophical work came to our light. And that was all just because of Rosa Luxemburg. She loved that script, which was handwritten, and then she got it published. This is one dimension of it. That means the preserving aspect of preservation aspect of it. So of the text. Now, second thing, which was also very important aspect, is that what do you think of those women who were not themselves philosophers, but they helped many people, particularly maybe the husband, the brother, and anybody else, to become a philosopher? Take the example of Bhamati, for instance, about Vachaspati Mishra. So the kind of commentary he wrote and everything else happened. It's a long story about it. So let us also see the role of woman in making a philosopher. A mother, her sense of judgment and judgment making in a way that nobody is annoyed in the family. Even if there are 7, 8 boys and girls in the same family, same blood relationship, but still she takes care of everybody. That sense of judgment is something which is very unique, and how much tolerant the person is. So sense of toleration, sense of justice, sense of love, care, concern, understanding. These are some of the aspects which are very important to shape human personality to become a good philosopher. And sometimes it happens that woman haters like Schopenhauer and others, because they were deprived of that kind of a genuine love, that they became a different kind of philosopher altogether. So role of a woman from the margins should also be taken into account, and that also is very substantive role, and it helps us to sustain a lot of problems in our personal problems in human life also. That also is very important one. Otherwise, I'm really very much impressed by all the presenters, and Professor Balram Singh, generally it happens that he goes to a lot of mythical reference, and authenticity of which is something which is very, very metaphorical, very suggestive, maybe kind of paradoxical also, but in a way it requires to be, some kind of bhaskara has to come forward to, analyze all these things. And the Professor Rakesh Chandra, wonderful, presentation you have. And I'm forgetting one person I had met in the late 1980s at Ahmedabad University. She was associate professor that time, very intelligent lady and very beautiful. And she invited me for a cup of tea at her home. I went there, and somebody came to her house. And when he saw that this lady is alone there with a guest, he said that, okay, I'll come later on. Then she said that, but what was your purpose? Why did you come here? He said, no, when your husband comes, then I'll come here. But tell me what is the issue? Then he said that, no, I want to sell a washing machine. Because he thought that only husband will take the decision. Wife is the associate professor, she can take the decision. So taking the decision at home, if the woman is educated and she is emancipated, she has a job, she can take her own decisions. And this kind of thinking is to be elevated. And feminist movement, all the way it came because of this lag, because they were not given right to property in European societies, European countries, UK, US, and then France, in Germany, and other places. So this, doing the job is something which is very important one, and having economic independence is also very important dimension of it. And then along with that, the kind of values like Shakti and other things, virtues which Professor Balram has talked about is wonderful kind of a thing. So thank you, Dr. Shipra. I think I took 3 minutes. So, but anyway.
Thank you so much, sir. So our minds are so ignited now. So many views. First of all, we should focus on 2-3 points. First point, is gender performance, or can we focus some spotlight on the idea in ancient times, the idea that is there any reflections that gender is performance in ancient philosophers, ancient women philosophers. Secondly, I would request Meera ma'am to throw some light on Professor Balram Singh's idea on Sita. And Shivani Sharma ma'am had already advocated the view that there are two kinds of women, and I'm agreeing with her point. I mean that woman or gender is an idea, and in principle, women must be what do you say? There is a woman in principle, like Saraswati and all. The best example is the Prakriti and Purusha. The idea of Prakriti in principle, that Prakriti is a woman, is the best example I ever have for our ancient Indian philosophy. So kindly discuss on this.
Okay, Shipra, thank you. Yes, I was very impressed by the professor who brought out, just 1 minute, just brought out Rosa Luxemburg's reference. Rosa was so radical, and then for her view, she was killed. She was murdered. And regarding the Marx's EPQ that he referred to, Marx never mentioned about women. It is Engels who has brought it in the context of family and property. So we praise them as highly liberal and progressive ideologies, but as far as gender is concerned, as far as women are concerned, Marx was totally silent. And he was, if you read his biography, you would also find something where he violated women's body. So what I want to say is that, as Professor Balram Singh rightly pointed out, I liked it that he mentioned Sita as a rebel. And as we read our epics, because our epics stand for certain values, the idea of, rather the question of authenticity or non-authenticity, date or history, etc., that is that apart, that is another issue with it. But as far as they represent values, we will have to perhaps, because we are finding through philosophy what is the value that the women really stood for. And Sita is a rebel. Yes, she is a rebel, because when she is humiliated, as after coming, nobody refers to Uttara Ramacharita. There refers to Ramayana, but there is also the Uttara Rama, the latter portions of Ramayana, where Sita is made to go through the fire ordeal. Why is Sita made to go through Agni Pariksha? Okay, you will say, okay, let people, because of chastity and all that. I mean, it would not stand any water in today's women's perhaps debate or discussion, because unchastity would be expected from both men and women. Now, we set aside that. But what she was standing was for her subjectivity, that her freedom and her dignity, as I referred to Martha Nussbaum, is referring to dignity and freedom that woman stands by. So her subjectivity will have to be, to be explored with a new aesthetic, with a different philosophy, new politics, and new kind of epistemology. While we have to renew our acquaintances with these women, since their subjectivity here needs to be revisited and maybe reflected as regeneration. Why is she is an agent of transformation? She rejects, after she passes through the fire ordeal, she said, okay, fine. And then, even then, I think she tolerates, or she says, okay, fine, I will stay with him. But after the washerman makes a remark and Rama decides to leave her, if you go to original Valmiki Ramayana, that is why I emphasize to go visit the sources. Original Sanskrit Ramayana, Valmiki takes Sita and chastises Rama. He says, what kind of a man he is? And then when Lakshmana comes to leave her to Valmiki's ashrama, Sita says, he doesn't say, okay, tell my husband that this is so. He says, tell that man. Sita, look at her words. He says, tell that man that this is okay, that I have reached. And she was pregnant. She was pregnant with Lava and Kusha. And so this is certainly standing for her own subjectivity, her own dignity and freedom. And then the story also says that she goes back to earth. That is a kind of rejection that she says, I will reject the world that has humiliated me. Maybe my husband is in that world also, but then I reject. And so her going back to earth is an act of protest, an act of asking for justice. And so Professor Balramji is very rightly pointed out her rebel role that Sita has. It's not that she was submissive. To be humble doesn't mean that you are a slave. It's just courtesy that you have vinaya, you have namrata, you have that is kind of a good gesture, that you are humble. So humbling doesn't mean you are a coward. It doesn't mean. So when you stand for your subjectivity, you stand for your dignity and freedom, then you have to rebel, because this is what is wrongly done. And later on in Lava and Kusha comes and kind of presents the story of Rama, where Rama and Lakshmana then comes back and then, feels guilty, and then he says, yes, we are wrong about it. But then giving her children, and she goes back. So I think this is a very, very strong message that Sita has sent to us. And Draupadi also, Dr. Shivani mentioned, Draupadi here is raising a question of why dharma, dharma is not religion there. Dharma is justice there. In the High Court, you will have this thing, dharmo rakshati rakshita. It's not religion protects. It is justice which protects you. So for justice, she says, how can you, if I am your, because at the then society, women used to be, wife used to be property of husband and the younger brothers also. That was the rule at those times. So if you read Mahabharata originally, this is how can you lose yourself, because then you lost your right. So she's arguing like a lawyer. She says, you have already lost your rights, and then how can you stake me? What kind of logic is that? And what kind of law is that? And Bhishma, Drona, and all the elderly people keeps quiet. It says, Dharmasya gati sukshma. Just saying that, oh, Dharma is very complex, so we can't. They are not talking of justice there. They are talking of religion there. So this is when you will.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm stopping.
So,
I'm stopping.
Chandra sir, what are your observation on Meera ma'am's comment, and what do you think about Sita and Draupadi? Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. And one of the things that I think I'd just repeat is that since your topic was on women philosophers, I'd like to submit that once again, that there are three views. One is that anybody who has a worldview is a philosopher. The other is that, you know, a philosopher is a technical person who does have a view on what is the nature of reality, or what are the sources of knowledge, what is the argumentation form, and in that sense. And the third is that in terms of Anviksha. And in that, I was just wondering that any woman who is strong, any woman who's rebellious, any woman who's honest will not qualify as a philosopher, though they are very important women figures. That's one point. There's two things which I just wanted to add to what Professor Meera and what Professor Balram Singh was saying. And I would very quickly come to Sita and Draupadi. One, I just wanted to add to what Meera ji and Balram Saab said. One is that you know, even in the Manas, which is not Valmiki, in that also there is a very strong feminist voice coming from Sita in terms of very anguished voice, which has been quoted by Ram Manohar Lohia. Katvidh rachahi nari jagmahi, paradheen sapnehu sukhnahi. Oh Lord, how have you created a woman who's always dependent, because the person who's dependent is not happy even in dreams. So this is, I think, a categorical reference to what Balram Singh was saying, that, you know, a woman has constantly to be somebody's ward, father, husband, or son. So that's one very interesting thing. The other thing about Draupadi, I think, again, Draupadi is a very interesting figure because she's not the daughter, not the lover, not the wife, not the mother of Krishna, but a Sakhi. So she's firstly an equal. And constantly he refers to her as Sakhi and she refers to him as Sakha. And one of the interesting things which I must tell you autobiographically, I always thought that why is it that Draupadi was not given the Gita ka Upadesh? And it's interesting that I got an answer. They said that she actually never had any dereliction of duty. So she always was a dutiful person, so she was never done that. And the arguments which are given by Draupadi are very fine. Also to Sita, I think in the Uttar Ramcharit, the words that she uses to Lakshman is said, "O Lakshman, go and ask your king. Go and ask your king. He made a promise to his father. The father made a promise to his wife. He's talking about making a promise to his subjects. What is the promise that he made to my father when he betrothed me?" Because whether Christians or Muslims or Hindus, everybody, when they are getting married, they say that in health or in ill health, I shall be by your side. So that is the kind of thing that. But again, what I want to say is that mythology is very interesting. And also Shipra, I wanted to call your attention to something which you said. The idea of Prakriti is a very troublesome idea. The idea of Prakriti in Sankhya Darshan is unconscious. It has the three elements, Mahat, Buddhi, Ahankar, everything comes out of it, but it is unconscious. The conscious principle is the male principle, the Purusha. So the centrality of the male principle, and that is what was being valorized by Shivani ji, when she said, oh, there's the one river and the other rivers are going around her. That's a little problematic. As feminists, we have a lot of problem. there's one small thing which, Shipra, if you will give me 1 minute, I want to say that.
Yes, sir.
And that's one small thing which I just wanted to add to what Professor R.P. Singh was saying, which was very important and beautiful. He was saying that, why should we talk only about women philosophers? We should also talk about women who supported creative people. And on that, I just wanted to say that it is also true for women. Let us look at Anandibai Joshi, the first medical graduate from Pennsylvania. She was married at 9, but she was supported by a man, her husband. Similarly, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, fascinated by Mahatma Gandhi. Godubai Karve or Anandibai, supported by her husband. And she also supports her husband to develop the first Bombay Presidency and Institution for Hindu Immigrants. Begum Sharifa Hamed Ali, again supported by her husband. Durgabai Deshmukh, again supported by her husband. Jyotirmai Bai, again supported by or fascinated by Rabindranath. So the women who have actually gained a lot of importance, like Bhikaji Rustamji Kama or Buttu Lakshmi or Pandita Ramabai, all these women whom we all remember right now, not necessarily philosophers, also had important figures who were men who supported her. So we are accepting the role of men and women in supporting each other. But since this talk today was about philosophy, I think one or two important things which were brought forward by our Professor R.P. Singh were very important. Sartre never acknowledges the contribution of Simone de Beauvoir, while Simone de Beauvoir constantly acknowledges Sartre. Marx is silent on gender, and it's only subsequently the things of we have the patriarchy family and the others in the writing of Engels. But most of the male writers, except with the notable exception of John Stuart Mill, no philosopher acknowledges the contribution of women in their lives. Stuart Mill, very, very importantly, acknowledges the contribution of Harriet Taylor. But rarely do men philosophers acknowledge women and their contribution in their lives. So it's important that as we are discussing, two things. One, we must talk about women, professional philosophers. Two, we must talk about the role of women accepted in philosophy. And I think it's very important we must have a separate session on Martha Nussbaum. I have done a lot of work on Martha Nussbaum and capability theory. And I think she again, and look at the difference between Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. Amartya Sen does not give you an account of capabilities. He's silent about that. But Martha Nussbaum upfront gives 10 human capabilities and 10 meta capabilities. And she talks about that and the failure of capability theory, especially with reference to women. So I'm very happy that all of us are talking about different aspects of it. And we are talking about women, and we are talking about women philosophers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So just one comment.
Shipra, can you give me a minute?
Hello, Shipra. I want to clarify.
Yeah, ma'am.
I just want to clarify because Professor Rakesh Chandra said that they are only women who are standing for them. They are not professional. I mean, I wouldn't agree that they would be professional philosophers. I just don't agree with that. But what I said in the very beginning of my discussion, I had said that philosophy would provide valuable society. And when I said that, this was quoted by Bertrand Russell. And then I quoted from Jean-Paul Sartre's philosophy, where he has championed the idea of freedom. So freedom, justice, etc. are philosophical values. And I quoted, I presented those women who stood for, as Balramji said, action. They stood for not only theoretically, but even put it into practice. That was important. And so, therefore, this clarification I just wanted to make. And we have in Nivedita, we have Mirabai, we have if you want historical persons and not people from this thing, we have Sharada Mani, Ramakrishna's wife, who stood for humanism. And Nivedita's thing on Indian culture and philosophy is so well known. So we have Mirabai and Pandita Ramabai. Yes, these people are there. So I think not only just professional philosophers, but they are also in action. That what would we try to point out? Sita was taking an action. Draupadi was taking an action against this to have her freedom and to have the call for justice. Thank you, Shipra.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I have
Just
one?
I want.
Yeah, can
Shivani,
I
ma'am.
just also, can I just submit a clarification with regard to that reference I made to Sapta Sindhu and Sindhu as a male nath? It is not a nadi, but that does not equate Sindhu as a conscious principle and Saraswati as an unconscious principle. No, not at all. Vedas, specifically Rig Veds, that is the Vak Sutta and the Nadi Sutta, it treats consciousness and the principle of Tao as a principle of knowledge, enlightenment, light, brightness. It does not treat the way Sankhya treats Prakriti. So this clarification is essentially to be taken note of. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Should I take half a minute? Because there is one clarification I would like to give.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes. Yeah,
So
yes.
this is about Rosa Luxemburg. In fact, when I refer to her, it's only a sense of, how that she preserved that manuscript of the EPM, which was otherwise a gone case. Marx did not publish it. In his lifetime, he published only Das Kapital Volume 1. Everything was posthumously published. And she was the one who had preserved it. And in 1919, when she was shot dead, she was killed. That time she transferred it to, Gaurav Lukács and the Hungarian philosophers to get it published. It was published, of course, very late. And it's, of course, that Marx did not have
Yes,
that kind of approach. And even Kant also did not have it. So there are so many philosophers, that way. What I really wanted to emphasize on it, that the kind of marginal roles which women have played in the society, and that was really the substantive part of it. And we should not ignore it. See, these days, even in Afghanistan and other war-like situations, women are taking up the steps to teach the students and to take care of every kind of preserving the knowledge situation, disseminating it. So such things are incredible in very, very many ways. They are doing it. So thank you. That's all. Just more clarification. But otherwise, we are in the world of infinite attributes, capabilities, which is there. In fact, let it go on. Shipra, I think we have to explore it many times.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So one clarification I want from Balram Singh, sir. Sir, you said that Pati means owner. And also,
Honor.
sir,
Honor, not
yeah,
owner. Honor.
honor. Sir, and we
Pati actually means
know that
owner.
Prakriti is unconscious. So two things are there. Prakriti is unconscious, but female principle, and Pati means that honor. And so, what is the position of women in ancient India?
So I also said that Patni is Pathini, means this is the one who tells where to go. Even though I think Professor R.P. Singh said about his friend that, who said, I would not sell this because it's not. I tell you this, my mother was totally illiterate. She was making all the decisions at home. Kis khet mein kya boya jayega, ye bhi decisions she used to make. So it depends on the families. Maybe city people are a little bit different, but I think in the village, that's how it is. Now your question about Prakriti and consciousness and Purush. Now I tell you this, because we come from different backgrounds, and I loved Professor Chandra's thing that we come with perspective, and then there are different kind of things that he described 3 points in which he said they just discuss. In one of them they just discuss. It's like a science of review. I think it's something like that. He said, well, we have an idea called non-falsifiability, that Newton came up with. The scientific truth is something that is non-falsifiable. But the implication in that is that you try to falsify your own idea. It's almost like a philosophy. You keep talking about it, different aspects, so many aspects. Actually, the science is exactly the same thing. It does, theoretically, it does the same thing. But in the practical thing is that they have limited thing that they can do, and then they can move forward. So the underlying principle is very scientific. From that point of view, today, the world is only the whole universe that even we have not seen the light from Big Bang 13 billion years ago, I mean, some light is still traveling to come here. It has not reached here, according to science. That means for so long, this huge, humongous universe that we have is only represent 4% of the world, of the universe, the power. The 96% is dark energy. And that is unconscious. That is Prakriti. So, we are having fun thinking of we are the, this is what happens. My daughter once, she was putting on a dress and I said, oh, how lovely this dress. You know what she said? She says, when you grow up, you will fit in this. So that's what I see. That, we claim ourselves to be so big, but we don't even know how tiny we are. We are so little. I cannot even imagine it. So when you say the Prakriti and Purus and talk about unconscious, the consciousness comes because of the brain and the sensory organs or Panchabhutas and all that. What about before that? Who determines that? Even in Rig Veda, it says that there was something that was not moving at all in Nasabhya Sut. It was neither moving nor not moving. Nobody even knew it existed. But then it has the kamana to be something. And that's when the vibrations started, oscillations or spandan. So we are talking about all this happening in that 4%. 96% is still you are all right. You are the one who is controlling. It's like Sesnag. I try to give this example that Vishnu is the expressed world, Jagat. But Sesnag is the rest. Isliye unka naam hi Sesnag, whatever remaining. So I feel that if we want to compare with that Prakriti and Purush, it is that, we are all, जैसे गोद में बच्चे खेलते हैं ना माँ की गोद में, वैसे ही है. अब वो माँ कभी हम I remember मेरे बच्चों को देखा था कि then sometimes they will bite their mother and then they will look at the face what she reacts like that and she just smiles and this goes away. So they don't take it that big a notice. But I think that is just too deep of maybe metaphysical thinking about all this. But I agree that it is important for the time, in the time that we are. We can't just keep talking about Sita, Draupadi and all these great things and not give any credence to the women who are today. But women also should remember this, that they are the representative of that also. So they cannot just, the Jabala is a great example. I mean, she just, of the time, she told the truth. What's wrong with that? She is valued for her truth. Even though, now today, I think, Sipra, I told you in my discussion with you, today, the statistics is 25% of kids are being raised as, father raises them as their kid. It's the statistics in the worldwide, 25% of kids are not his kids. That's the statistics, but he's still raising it. So this whole idea to come up with the truth, I think is a great idea. No matter what, I may not like it, I may not agree with it, but I think people should be truthful. And Jabala was one of those examples. So that's why she is so, she had a son, the Guru also accepted the son, and she's still known. Jabali was and he was like one of the great scholars or saints or whatever you want to call them. But the mothers really have this. And although I know the last point I want to make, and maybe you can ask me other questions, but even though we think that, let's not worry about biology. No, you are the whatever, you can't ignore it. The biology is part of you. And you better understand your biology. I better understand my biology. Nothing to do even with the gender. Forget it. Biology is what is running us. This is what the life and death is for us. So we must make peace with biology and then make the mind, then the consciousness or unconsciousness, whatever the Sankhya philosophy says. But without Gyanendriya, Karmendriya, Panchabhut, it doesn't exist. So I think we need to empower. I would do this to my daughters and all those who I consider daughters, that they should be empowered, use their qualities and demonstrate. And I think the world is in big trouble right now. And we need more female and women philosophers using their own Prakriti, using their own qualities. Like I just said, whatever comes from Bhagavad Gita. Guide us. Guide the rest of the world.
Sorry for interruption, sir. One observation from Dr. Jayanti Sahu. Ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening to all and good morning to Professor Singh. And actually, it gives me always a kind of painful affair when I listen to all such distinct discussions regarding women. And every time we bring some kind of like idealistic explanation and give a kind of position from either from Sita or from Upanishad, Satyakam Jabala story or Yagyavalkya Maitreya discourse. That is good to listen to all this and prove that women are in a better position. And we just try to, I don't know what is the reason behind it, but always I find something I don't accept what exactly uh, the discussion is, that always we are trying to prove the existence of the woman. So that means there is some kind of problem is there within the society, not being taking them as equal as the man. Because if we go by Indian tradition, certainly there is no distinction between any kind of gender. When we talk about Prakriti of the Sankhya system or Purusa, so there is a kind of Prakriti is taking as a material substance, and Purus is the spiritual substance, as Professor Chandra also very rightly points out that Prakriti is unconscious. So why always there is a projection that we are trying to prove so many adjective qualities to prove that woman is good, like woman is good. So we don't question the existence of the man, never being questioned by the society, or whether it is Ram. And so Ram is always being treated as Maryada Purushottam, not so as Sita. Sita has to prove her existence. So my question is to all the panelists, though I'm not very happy with the discussion that we are looking for always saying that there is a very good picture. It's not that. When it comes to the epistemological theory that the women are the women are women, their feelings are never being taken care of, their emotions and the rationality always treated. So many philosophers already being mentioned that women do not have the mathematical knowledge. So saying this, we just want to again continue the same traditions or same parampara which has been practiced, saying that there is Sita, there is Saraswati, there is Meera, there is so many. Yes, they are the idealistic example. Because of that, women themselves feel great. But this is not the practice where the women, the life has changed. So, if we are real philosopher, we should bring out the problems what the women are facing in that. So, talking about Sita and Draupadi, or because they belong to a different kind of setup, and this is not common women and common general women. They are not facing that some kind of problem. And what about the male? Why don't we question the existence of male? So that is a problem, that if we cannot address the problem of the epistemological issues, then talking about the metaphysics only and giving an idealistic explanation, everybody knows that Sita is Sita. And many women praise Sita, many women praise Draupadi. But their challenges are different and our challenges are different. So always there is a gap between the appearance and reality. Institution of marriage are never being analyzed, discussed, and the truth has never been spoken. So that is a kind of my observation. And there is no feminist. What is feminism? Who is a feminist? So why do we talk about that? That which is something which is very the hypocrisy of the either of the existence of the women, and saying that they are good. Yes, they are good. Ultimately, they are good because in one life they are leading so many positions. So you have to. So truth has to be spoken, and there are many things we need to explain also philosophically. That saying that the Sita and Draupadi doesn't solve the realistic explanation of the woman. So that's my
Thank you. Thank you
submission.
so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. One last observation I need from Chandra sir as a concluding remark of the session.
Thank you very much. I'm actually
Shipra,
very
excuse me.
happy that there have been
Shipra,
so many
Yes, ma'am.
interesting. If we were, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very
there
happy that
needs
many
to be some
dimensions have come
clarification.
forward.
One minute, sir. Meera ma'am.
There's some clarification needed.
Yes, ma'am.
Shipra.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Professor Rakesh Chandra, just 2 minutes, give me 2 minutes. So calling this as idealistic position when the people are acting is very very unfair. By the last speaker, Dr. Sahu or somebody. And moreover, the topic was given as women in ancient India and modern India. So therefore, the ancient Indian, the time may be different. Patriarchy is same. Whether this is the ancient India or modern India, patriarchy has been behaving in the same way. So you cannot say that it was a different time and it was a different thing, and then why Sita or Draupadi or what, they were certainly rebelling against, they were putting their philosophy against the patriarchy. That cannot be denied. And so therefore, this clarification, this distinction has to be made. Okay, Professor Rakesh Chandra, please.
Yeah.
Can I also submit something, Professor Chandra? Can I just in a line? And academic discussions and debates are all about perspectives with regard to the core, and not it is not in the light of somebody's happiness. It is not a discourse on happiness or somebody's contentment. It could differ, and hence it is all about putting things in their own respective perspectives. So, as you know, it could be an ancient perspective, and it is not about eulogizing any of the perspectives. It is just putting up the things in the right perspective. Your or mine position may not be sufficient to solve any concrete situation, but that doesn't mean that it is a futile exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any queries? No?
Can I just say, as I was said, I think I'll just summarize in 2 minutes. One, I think that we really need to think about, when we have a topic like women philosophers, make up our mind, what do we mean by philosophers? And in that, I think it's an important thing, as I mentioned in the very beginning, that any worldview is one ordinary language use of the term philosophy, just as science in ordinary language and science used by technical people is used differently. So when we talk about philosophy technically, then we have to look at the texts, and we have to see that when you are looking at the Yagyavals, what Maitreyi have to contribute, what does Gargi have to contribute, and what are the arguments and how are they looked? So are they of the same order as the Ramanuj Shankar debate and the others? So that's one very important thing. And I think that it would be a very good idea to take out some of the women philosophers from the ancient world and see their argumentative work, rather than these private stories about how they stood for their husband or not stood for their husband. The other thing which I think is very important is that the ideas, when they are put from one philosopher to the other, sometimes they mean things which are very different. Like the idea of soteriology or nirvana and mukti in classical Indian philosophy, and the way it is spoken of in an atheistic existential philosopher like Jean-Paul Sartre, are not at all the same. And I say that with great responsibility. I have spent 40 years teaching philosophy, and I have written several papers on Buddhism and existentialism. And so we have to see that they are, just because they use the term freedom in two places, it means the same. It's not true. But thirdly, and very importantly, I think that what we need to do is right now that we can have a few lectures or clarifications or readings for ourselves, because every one of us right now is provoked and excited to read writers like Martha Nussbaum and Hannah Arendt, and some of the new women philosophers who are, especially Martha Nussbaum, who's talking about capability theory, and see that how does it frame the larger philosophical debate and the feminist debate. In India, I would again recommend a book written by Professor Shefali Moitra, which is called Communication, Objectivity and Feminist Thought, which I think is not read very much, but it's a brilliant work which should be read by all of us. I am extremely delighted that all of us were very passionate about whatever we were saying. And one small thing which I think that because it depends upon people who are teaching philosophy. When they talk about idealism, then they mean idealism as a philosophical view which believes that everything is of the nature of consciousness. It does not mean a distinction between real utopia and action. So when Jayatiji was talking about idealism, she was saying that in the idealist Indian thought, generally people think about a genderless consciousness, but in the actual world, anywhere across space and time, we find that in the embodied self, women have been humiliated, subjugated, and subordinated, both in theory and practice. And therefore, when you look at Tarabai Shinde writing in Sri Purush Tulana, or you find when people are writing in the Theri Gatha of the Buddhist Bhikshunis, they are saying, Kalyug kitta sundar hoga jab chakki se mukti milegi. So we find voices of discomfort with the position assigned to women in all ancient scriptures, including in the Greek plays like Antigone and the others. So those voices have always been present. But did they become the voices of the culture? Did they get enough sanction? We all know they did not. And therefore, I think the feminist issues and philosophical issues are not the same issues, and they have to be studied with great caution. Women in philosophy, treatment of philosophy and women, treatment of women by philosophers, women philosophers, all of them are separate things. And I'm so happy that many of these things were touched by all the brilliant speakers. And what was very, very nice was that they were very passionate about it, emotionally charged. Apart from their scholarship, they were a very, very strong emotion, which I thought was very important for a debate like this. And so it's a cafe where we have no real coffee, but I think there's enough
I have cup.
stimulation.
Cup. For sure. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you for igniting our minds. And I would request my dear colleague Aparna Dheer ji to give a vote of thanks.
Namaskar. With the ongoing celebrations of International Women's Day, this cafe of esteemed philosophers is turned out to be highly interesting with thought-provoking ideas from our renowned panelists here. It was very pleasing to have you all today. On behalf of Institute of Advanced Sciences and Kuruom School of Advanced Sciences, we are grateful to you all to join us today, in this great initiative of Philosophy Cafe. All the discussions were, though, based on philosophy, but highlighted the great women scholars of our Indian thoughts and culture and their qualities to remember throughout. Thank you, everyone, our respected guests, colleagues, and friends, and special thanks to the moderator, Dr. Shipra Dikshit ji, to organize this special session with so much ease. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Aparna ji. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Meera ma'am. And I would like to hear you on Panchakanya, Meera ma'am. and that debate will be going on with Chandra sir and Balram sir and other philosophers too. We'll add other philosophers, young philosophers, and we can have mini symposium on Panchakanya, ma'am. So thank you, everybody. I'm so much delighted with your discussion and debate. Thank you, all our viewers. Stay connected with us for the next session. We would have our speaker from IIT Kanpur. Stay connected. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Okay.